Throughout the world, children are being abused and sold into sex slavery. And now, a new report says they're also increasingly being used by Islamic terrorists as suicide bombers. Gary Lane brings us the story.
Man, they fry you if you're wrong.
This was one of the most disturbing scenes in the hit movie American Sniper. To save American soldiers from certain death, sharpshooter Chris Kyle targets and kills a child terrorist. That movie scene was not simply Hollywood fiction. It depicted a real-life situation in the midst of war and the agonizing choice made by Kyle. And now a new United Nations report confirms an alarming increase in the use of child bombers by Islamic extremists. According to UNICEF, in northern Nigeria, the Islamic terror group Boko Haram has increased the number of child bombers used in attacks from 4 to 44. 75% were girls. Many of them have been kidnapped, like the 276 Chibok schoolgirls abducted 2 years ago. During an interview with CBN News, Ithaca University professor P.A. Soyinka Arawele called on progressives and Muslims to deal with the hard truth about Islam and terrorism.
Those who are Muslims today might have to do some critical self-assessment of the reality of how the faith is being utilized to wage war against their fellow citizens.
And not just by Boko Haram, but also by the Islamic State. The Voice of America reports an Iraqi Kurdish commander says ISIS now has 2 or 3 training centers in Mosul, Iraq, where children as young as 8 are being taught to carry out suicide attacks. Some Muslims are now questioning those who refuse to condemn such actions. Saudi Arabian TV host Nadine El-Boudair made a stinging rebuke of those she called Muslim hypocrites. She said it's time for Muslim apologists to realize violence and terrorism have emerged from the Islamic environment.
نحن من فجرنا أنفسنا ونحن من نفجر بغيرنا. واللي أبغى أسأله هو لماذا نتنصل من الضمير نحن؟ لماذا يصر المشايخ والمحللون والكتاب والصحافة وكل مسؤول عربي على استخدام الضمير هم عند الإشارة لمنفذي الهجمات؟
And now, more than ever, Islamic extremists are training and using an alarming number of the most innocent in society, children, to commit acts of terror. Gary Lane, CBN News.
You know, it never ceases to shock you, doesn't it? I don't know about you, but it makes me so angry to see men, faces covered, hiding their identity, and now using children for their dirty work. I just call upon all peace-loving Muslims in the world to stand up, point your finger at those who are doing this and saying, stop, enough is enough. Well, in other news, the governor of North Carolina has made some minor changes in the state's new bathroom bill, but critics say it isn't enough. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Terry. Governor Pat McCrory signed an executive order to amend that new law. The order reaffirms government bathrooms be separated according to biological sex, but it does allow private businesses to make their own bathroom policies.
The people of North Carolina are entitled to both privacy and equality. The private sector can make its own policy with regard to restrooms, locker rooms, and/or shower facilities. This is not a government decision.
Mississippi is facing similar assault after Governor Phil Bryant signed a new religious liberty bill. It protects the rights of religious workers and groups on issues like same-sex marriage.
Simply all we're trying to do is say that people of faith have some protection from an overbearing government.
Gay and transgender rights issues are popping up across the country, and several state legislatures have been reassessing their public policies. Can taxpayers rest assured last year's IRS security breaches won't happen again? Probably not. The Senate Finance Committee is reviewing how the IRS is dealing with ongoing cyber attacks to protect sensitive taxpayer data. But the problem seems bigger than current resources.
Hackers and crooks, including many who work for foreign crime syndicates, are jumping at every opportunity to steal hard-earned money and sensitive personal data from American taxpayers. It happens online, and it happens in the real world. In my view, taxpayers have been failed by the agencies, the companies, and the policymakers here in the Congress that they are counting on to protect them.
The IRS wants Congress to restore the authority to quickly hire cybersecurity experts when needed. While there's new evidence, parts of the Bible were written long before some scholars had argued. Israeli mathematicians and archaeologists used handwriting analysis technology similar to what's used by intelligence agencies. They found proof that some biblical texts, from the book of Joshua to the second book of Kings, were likely written before Jews were held captive by the Babylonian Empire in 586 BC. That's several centuries older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. The findings were released in an American scientific journal. Well, archaeologists recently found 2 rare ancient seals in Jerusalem's City of David. Chris Mitchell reports on how the discovery explains more about the historic city and the people who live there.
Archaeologists found the seals inside a 2,500-year-old building.
Inside this building, as a result of very gentle work that include also sifting of the finds, sifting of the airs in order to find all these tiny artifacts, we discovered, among other stuff, 2 Hebrew seals, one with the name of a man, Sariyahu ben Shvaniyahu, and another one with the name of the woman, Eliana bat Goel.
The discovery took place here in an area known as the City of David. This 9-year-old excavation has served as a timepiece documenting the history of ancient Jerusalem.
We are standing in the heart of ancient Jerusalem, so-called City of David, the term that the Bible used for this place. The city started here and developed on a very small square here in these places for thousands of years. We have 10 historical periods here, starting from the 9th century BC. It's just some 100 years later than the kingdom of David and Solomon. And we have many more young, I would say, less ancient finds, including Hasmonean, Hellenistic period, Roman, Byzantine, and early Islamic. And each period excavated here revealed the most interesting and most exciting finds.
Jihadovich says it's extremely rare to find the name of a woman on a seal.
It's very exciting to know that in ancient times were strong women in Jerusalem living here, and even we have no idea about who was this lady and why she deserved such a special rights in the society. The women's status in the ancient Near East usually wasn't that high. That's why it's so interesting to find a seal signed by a woman name. I think it's very inspiring because we know that in this society that we know as a man world, yeah, and in ancient Near East, such a long time ago, even then there were women who were capable to run their own independent life.
Some feel Eliana might have been like the woman described in the book of Proverbs, where it says, she seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Jihadovich says uncovering a name brings the past and its people to life.
When you have a name of the person, it's turning from something very abstract to something very individual. So we know that they were here by names. I think it's amazing. And that it's a woman, I think it's really very inspiring.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the City of David, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Terry, it's interesting. We might now have a name to associate with a Proverbs 31 virtuous woman.
It's incredible. Israel is such an amazing land, rich in history and ancient artifacts and full of surprises even today.